today I thought we'd kind of just first like to check in to see how everybody's doing. Since we really haven't been, that much in touch. Like it's without lacrosse, like it's really been. I've been a little lost, but I want to see how you guys are doing. We'll go from my right to left or left to right. So Ward, how are you? How's your family?
Everyone's good here. I said I've told people I'm sort of made for social distancing. I don't like talking to people very often anyway. So I'm just I'm just living in my house in my basement. My kids are on another floor. My wife's on another floor. So we're doing fine. It's just so weird. It's a strange phenomenon going on, and I don't know how much longer it's going to last. But it's definitely a weird time.
Yeah.
For sure.
I was gonna ask you how's Junior doing? Because I know he had a rough year last year with the injury, and now this. So he's
Yeah.
had a rough couple years for a couple different reasons.
Yeah, so he's had 2 years of injuries. So he was healthy. He was finally a little out of shape, but finally looking healthy. They got to play one game. So they played one
Oh,
game, and I made like a funny highlight video of his junior year video out of it. It was 1 minute long.
yeah,
Uh, but he was getting fat. The good thing about this is now every day when I'm down here in my basement listening and watching my shows, all of a sudden I hear the bounce back, and he's in there lifting weights and throwing the ball against the bounce back without even telling them. They have to, he's Dad. You want to go out and play catch? So that's a little different. Like I don't have to get on him or anything. So he's doing that, and so that's. I mean, I guess that's the silver lining that he's missing it. You take it away, and then they love it. So, and then talking to some college coaches, that's the only.
yeah,
But he's looking good.
yeah.
He's looking good.
Good to hear. How about you, Lee? How are things down in Florida? I'm surprised you're not on a beach, on somewhere right now.
If I got on a beach, I'd be arrested probably. You'd have to stay away from that. They actually arrested a guy on a paddle boat the other day who was just out there on the water by himself.
Yeah.
Uh, down here a little bit later to the breakout, although I think they kind of traced it back maybe to the Super Bowl. Remember, we had the Super Bowl down here on February 2nd,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of San Francisco fans were in town. So that might have been sort of our introduction to all this. And when you look at what it's affected, Palm Beach, Broward, and Dade, which is the southeast, corridor, is basically where more than half the cases are in the state. As far as me, my significant other probably is happy to be distanced from me. Our son, who's just turned 25, has been out of the house for a couple of years already. Those who know that my profession is actually as an investment advisor, and this has been a very tough 3 weeks or so for clients and advisors together. I've pretty much been self-isolated within the place at least 2.5 weeks now,
Yeah.
going a little stir crazy. There's not a lot left on Netflix that I want to see. But thankfully, the health is there, and the lacrosse is not. We had a little bit different from you guys up there in that we actually got through almost pretty much half the season
Yeah.
before we shut down. But to be honest, this season has kind of been jinxed from the beginning.
Yeah.
We had talked obviously about the classifications and what that had meant, but boy, in the last, we've had three major pieces of bad news down here. The day before the season started, Westminster Christian captain Lucas Alvarez died in a boating accident.
I heard about that.
Then on March 19th, right after we were shut down, Mark Bavaro on Cardinal Mooney was also in a boating accident,
Yeah.
and he is now up at Shepherd Center in Atlanta, hoping to start the journey back to walking again. And then right after that, Roger Bradford, parent of Dylan Bradford, a senior on Jupiter and a local coach in the Jupiter Teguesta area, also died in a boating accident. So we have just had, I've never had a season like this before where we've had things that have gone well and things that have just gone like this
Yeah.
all in one shot.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I was reading a story today about a kid at South Carroll in Maryland. Like he was in his backyard, you know, kind of like junior, like he was practicing lacrosse, and I guess some guy went and murdered his, like came over and murdered his wife, like, and then shot the kid, and then went home to Gaithersburg, Maryland, and shot himself. And so like it's just one of those stories. In the article I was reading, they were like, yeah, he would have been at school had under normal circumstances. Um, so it's just obviously it's uh, yeah, it's obviously a rough season for multiple things, and you never want to hear those kind of stories no matter what. So yeah, it's I think this is gonna be a weird season. Like I've been kind of trying to wrap my hand around. I guess for me, like me and the wife and the sister-in-law, we're all doing good. We're all wife and I live, like, we basically have a three flat, and my sister-in-law lives on the second floor. My wife and I obviously live on the bottom floor, so we're self-isolating more or less. Like we've both been, like she's been out. They've canceled. She's an occupational therapist, and they canceled schools up until so far until May, end of April. We keep talking. After Indiana, I'm like, oh, I know they've closed school for the rest of the year. Like, and Michigan just shut it down for the rest of the year. I kind of have trouble believing that Illinois will be any different. I don't think they'll be the holdout. I don't know what Wisconsin's going to be doing at this point, but I don't think she'll be going back. I just found out from my work yesterday that we're not going back till at least May 18th now. But that date has changed a couple times since this all started. Like before, it was 2 weeks, and then it was the end of April, and now it's middle of May. So, but I mean, for me, it's kind of funny. Like Michael, kind of like you, like I'm kind of no. Well, you're obviously not an introvert, but I kind of do self isolation anyway. So like for me, working from home, I'm like I'm okay with it. It's the not being able to go anywhere or really do anything. Like luckily, like places are open. We can kind of go. Like we went to the corner store that's also a grocery store, and we got really good Mexican food, so we're lucky there. So we grabbed some tostadas and tacos, and that's like our trip out. We still run in the morning, so that's kind of like to keep us sane and keep us from going at each other. But we've been going strong. Like we kind of joked and we're like, it's like we haven't been in one real argument yet. Like and we spend every waking moment together now. Like neither of us are going to work. Yeah, definitely be knocking on wood. I don't want to do it for the audio, but yeah, other than that. But yeah. So, but you can't really. We're healthy and we can't really complain too much. So we're fortunate there. I do kind of want to give an update. I guess I don't know if any of you guys saw, but Tanner Demling, who covers the Southeast for me, his dad is now in the hospital with symptoms. He sent me the link. He told me that yesterday, and he sent me the link. And once we're kind of done with this, I'll leave the links in the YouTube. But I guess there's someone, because he works for 24/7 Sports, his dad Jody, and they've set up kind of a page you can kind of keep updated. The update that I saw, like he was on a ventilator. As they kind of go on. But it sounded like he was doing overall pretty well, and Tanner and his family's doing well, other than his dad. So obviously, kind of keep him in your prayers, because it's kind of this is rough enough. And then once you kind of find people that are kind of when you start to actually get touched by it, it becomes one of those things where it's a little bit more real. At least for me, it's one thing to read it in the newspaper or see it on the news in the morning. Then when you start to know people that it's been affected by, it's a little crazy. At least health-wise, obviously we're all kind of affected with it just because of lack of lacrosse season, which actually kind of brings us to our next topic, I guess, of sorts after the check-in is, I guess what's going on in your guys' neck of the woods. Lee, we'll start with you this time. I know last I heard, I don't think you guys have officially canceled yet, right?
Not officially. I would be stunned if we got back before the season was scheduled to end. But I think that there are a number of high schools that have been talking to each other about maybe being able to do something after the season, along the lines of having high school teams play as clubs and having a couple of round robin tournaments maybe, or even single or double knockout type tournaments. That's sort of still being discussed, but the desire to, obviously because we end so early, even with school. I mean, May 8th, 15th, whatever it is, we're done with the schools down here. So there's a little bit of time after the schools end that we can sort of have more informal approaches to sort of allow the teams to get some more action in and to play, give the seniors. A number of schools were able to get senior night in the last night. The shutdown orders kind of came down Friday morning, I guess it was, and kind of filtered out a little slowly. And some of the schools knew that that was going to be it, and they front loaded their senior night. Even, for instance, Jupiter and Oxbridge decided to play. They had already played once this year,
Mm-hmm.
and instead of Jupiter going over to Cardinal Mooney, they ended up having a senior night at Oxbridge for both teams. And I know that some of the schools didn't get a chance to do that either. The way that the season was playing out, it was sort of not very different from what we discussed in the preseason
Yeah.
going into it. Some of the schools that took that leap up, Kings Academy, Heritage Plantation, Benjamin was coming back. Lake Highland, interestingly enough, looks like it's gotten back on track, back into the possible race
Yeah. I saw a
for.
few of their scores. They
And
looked
I
like they
think
were doing
that,
pretty well.
yeah, I think that Lake Highland and Ponte Vedra was actually scheduled to play,
I think
or
so.
Lake Highland and Bishop Moore was scheduled to play the day before the season, or the day after the season ended up getting canceled. And so we missed out on some pretty good matchups, and obviously all of the schools that came down that were going to come down
Yeah.
from up north. I listened to the podcast with Tom and his kids
Yeah.
going up to Maryland. I watched both of those games online. They gave Gilman a heck of a game.
Yeah.
They really showed. And whatever happened with boys Latin, it happened. You're going to get a game like that where something gets off the rails and it just snowballs on you.
Well,
But we're
Boys
very
Latin returned
proud.
everybody from last year and added Brendan Grimes back because he was injured most of last
Yeah.
year. that's mostly kind of what happened. Is they're just that they're really good, really good.
Yes. Yeah, that's an extra cut above. But when you look at it, I think that we actually had, although truncated, we had a very interesting year in that we had a lot of kids make Division One rosters. Besides, I think we had said 75 or so on the D1 rosters on the men's side. One of my readers put together the women's side. We had over 100 on Division One women's programs out of the state this year, and I think that just says an awful lot. When you look at the downside, some of the things you look at, we're going to miss Caitlin Wurzberger her senior year,
Yeah.
and a goalie on Lake Highland I've been so impressed with, Reagan Alexander, who's on your way up into the Midwest. She'll be an Ohio State commit, and she is the most athletic goalie I have ever seen on the girls' side. And I think she's going to really impress people at the next level. And that Lake Highland Heritage Del Rey matchup, which we didn't get to see in the regular season, and would have been a wonderful Final Four matchup because these are two top 10 teams
Yeah.
in the nation in the Inside Lacrosse Bowl, and we have two of them in Florida.
Yeah.
That's just a marvelous thing.
Yeah.
One little fun little thing that happened was Antonio Brown actually showed up at a high school game down here.
Yeah. I saw that report.
It was kind
I
of
saw
funny.
that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of cute. And also, uh, we had some nice Division Two and Three All American selections out of the state. Wyatt Schupler, the Army goalie,
Yeah.
Ponte Vedra
Yeah,
grad, made the third team Maverick Division One All American team. Jared only made honorable mention this year, and Mikey Adler, the St. Thomas goalie, made for St. Joe's. He was honorable mention goalie All American too. And then on the D2 side, Noah Haas, a Gulf Breeze grad, second team sophomore Beaumont Abbey, and Kevin Horwitz, who I'm very friendly with the family, a Stoneman Douglas grad, Florida Southern faceoff, made as a junior. He made the third team All-American for Florida Southern D2 level. So
Yeah.
we had some pretty nice ups and to go with the downs that we saw so far.
Yeah. Ward, how about you? What obviously I know the state of what it is in your neck of the woods, but what's going on in Indiana and your kind of purview?
Well, we didn't even get started.
Yeah.
That's the terrible part. I mean, I got to go see games. I guess they weren't official games, so I think I saw 8 games, 7 games. I got to see Culver play
Yeah.
3 times. I actually was with Tanner down in Louisville,
Mm-hmm.
watching them play. God, who do they play? Montgomery Bell.
Yeah.
And the scary thing, again, I think a lot of kids, this is horrible for them, especially the seniors, especially kids who were coming back and they were trying to get a year, like my son or somebody else who was coming off an injury.
Yeah.
Players. The crazy thing about Culver is they looked better than last year.
Yeah.
And that's saying something.
Yeah.
There was just a different dynamic, and I was really excited to watch them. I was really excited because I was going to go out east and check out some of their games. There were a lot of questions going into this season in the Midwest. During the preseason rankings, when people don't have Loyola Academy 1 or 2 in Illinois, and they're saying this is the time for St. Viator to jump above them, or Evanston. Evanston seemed to be a lot of people's dark horse pick. And before it even got started, it was over. So, and there's and I know a lot of these kids, and I feel horrible for them. There were kids who were seniors who were still looking to go, commit. They were still talking with schools, and they don't even get to show their last season. So, it's a bad situation. It's horrible for them. There's nothing you could do. It's happening to everybody.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of, let's see what happens, and hopefully this summer they can try to get out there. I know I've talked with a few different people who run tournaments out east to see what their contingency plans are. The Under Armour All America stuff, the National All Stars, the NLF tournament. Talk with them to see what they're going to do. So it seems like everyone's a little nimble. I talked with with Terry Foy from Inside Lacrosse, and I asked him about, at some point, would they allow 20s to play? And he said, that's something they'd look into. I think at some point, as Lee was saying, I've talked with some coaches talking about playing the teams like the NHSLS, doing a Midwest-like type of tournament. That's something that's been batted around. We were talking with some people yesterday, just to give these kids a chance to get out there and at least say, hey, I finished my season. I got to play with my teammates one more time.
Yeah.
That would I think that little thing, if it was one game even, like Lee said, they had senior nights in Florida.
Yeah.
I mean, they got
a
some
few.
guys got to have their senior night. There are some kids who busted their butt for years, and senior night's that night where you get to run through everybody and get the applause.
Yeah.
And they're going to miss out on it, missing out on prom.
Yeah.
So hopefully, if something as simple as lacrosse, and we can do something in the summertime to get these kids maybe a little closure on their season, that would be something. And I know a lot of people are talking about it. I know a lot of people are working on it. I get a lot of calls. I get a lot of people that I'm speaking with. I'm sure Lee's hearing things down there. I'm sure it's happening everywhere. It's just a matter of, the uncertainty right now.
Yeah.
We don't know when.
This
could be going on all summer.
Yeah.
We don't know.
That actually brings us David Pounder. He left a comment in there, like, what are our thoughts on high school with high school less and less likely, with summer increasingly being at risk. Like, obviously, I guess I will first add the caveat that none of us are, qualified doctors or anything like that to really know what's going to happen. But I've kind of constantly been asking people, like, what do we think is going to happen with summer? I mean, even like stuff like the Under Armour games and stuff like that. I'm like, this stuff gets closer and closer because, I mean, tryouts for under the underclass games would be starting soon, I believe, and something like I think down in the southeast and stuff like that. So, I'm kind of like I don't know if what you guys have any thoughts like, do we think that what do you? I mean, my best guess is I'm figuring probably maybe July, before, and then but I still even wonder like if people were really like we're probably not going to feel normal in July. So you always kind of wonder like what that'll actually end up being like. I don't know if you guys have thoughts. You've been talking to anybody. It's like because I know I've seen a few tournaments that have tried to move or push dates, but it's still kind of in question. It's like we want to do late June, early July, but it's all kind of a hope at this point too. We
Yeah.
don't actually know.
Mike, I think that as much as we talk about this, Mike's point about closure really is the key thing to me because for the vast majority of kids, their high school is it,
Yeah,
the end of the road for their organized sports, particularly in this sport which has so few slots for all the high school players that play this sport around the country. I think it would be much better to focus on how you find that closure.
yeah,
Now, as far as the timeline is concerned, obviously we're not, doctors, research assistants, things like that. There will be the part where we solve the problem, whether vaccine or antibody or whatever comes along, and then there will be that mental aspect of how long do you go before you feel comfortable.
yeah,
That's really the story that will sort of lead to what is the time frame. We were, you think back to 9/11, even though it happened all in one day, I don't think any of us got on an airplane for 6 months without feeling comfortable.
yeah,
I don't think any of us, I was in an area where a lot of the hijackers were preparing or had lived. So there were stories that would float around in our area long after that had happened. So, these are the types of things that you get good surprises and bad surprises.
yeah,
The bad surprises are going to be those who are not able to put it out of their mind, but then you also have the good surprises. You might very well see a younger generation having been shocked out of a lethargy
yeah,
and maybe understanding, okay, we got to grow up a lot faster. These are the types of things you see during wartime. You go back and you read the history of World War One, World War Two, and how in the Depression, how these people had to grow up quickly. And you look back at what we've experienced, say, in the last since 9/11, which is 19 years ago already. And then you say to yourself, well, the kids who have grown up today, with the exception maybe of the financial panic, which was solved relatively quickly, what have they really faced in an adversarial way? This is it. And this is the type of thing that gets you to grow up a lot quicker.
yeah. How about you, Michael? Any thoughts on summer? I know you kind of touched on a little bit with what you're saying, but like from what you're hearing and who you're talking to, like how likely do you think we're gonna get? Like it's not gonna be a normal summer. I think we can kind of throw that out the window. It's gonna be modified in some fashion, but like, what are your thoughts?
Well, anyone who's got a tournament in June that I've spoken with all have their fingers crossed.
Yeah,
They are making contingency plans right now. Um, some places it's hard to get, to try to shift to the end of July, maybe early August. Then all of a sudden you start getting into different schools or state associations if you're allowed to play with that. So
yeah,
it's got to be. I know everyone's nervous, and I know the people I've talked to, pretty much are writing off June.
yeah,
They're pretty much saying no June. So I just go along with that. I also think what this is going to do, and I, hate talking about the travel teams and whatever, or the tournaments. I think this is going to be a washout of some of the marginal or smaller tournaments, or it might be an only the strong survive type deal.
yeah,
only the biggest and the best are going to last, because if your team can only go to one tournament and they say, let's go to this one, they might cut out a more of a fledgling tournament. So there could be the destruction of perhaps some travel teams, the destruction of some college teams because of this,
Yeah.
because of the money not coming in. I think this is going to reverberate a lot longer than just not being able to play for this year or later in the thing. I'm looking at more of the what's the backlash in a year or 2 years. I mean, if you can't give out scholarships, if you can't, if you don't have money in your program to start, that's the other part. But as far as this summer, I mean, I'll tell you from example for my standpoint. So I have a son who's a junior.
Yeah.
And so he needs to be seen, and he has no film now for his junior year.
Yeah.
A Midwest kid, unless you're at Culver, a superstar, wasn't getting a scholarship offer unless they were, the seniors were getting them.
Right.
So now I have to sit there and say, okay, he had 3 tournaments that he was going to, or 4 tournaments he was going to. He had 2 All-American tryouts that he was going to. But now I might have to say, we're not going to that, and you're going to this prospect day, or this prospect, because that might be the better opportunity to go directly in front of the coach you have to see.
Yeah.
So that's the decision some parents are going to be making. That's the decision some coaches will be making. And then hopefully, like I said, maybe some sort of tournament could happen in July, maybe early August, that you could get some kids that could all play together, that could get some closure for the 20s.
Yeah.
So that's, but again, it's all up in the air. No, we don't.
Yeah.
This could be going on till Christmas. I mean, they're talking about the NFL today.
Yeah.
They're sitting there saying, "Oh, we could wonder if that's going to start on time."
Yeah.
I mean, that's a multi-billion-dollar business. You think that if they're worried about that, they don't care about high school lacrosse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to your
And,
point, like.
Also.
Go ahead, Lee.
I was also going to say that let's not forget, it's not like the country is going to roll through this at the same time.
Yeah.
We also have to remember that there are areas that have not really been impacted yet and might start in another week or 2. So even if you have a plan that by June and you have travel teams coming together, if we're lucky, maybe only a third of the states can have gotten to the point where there's enough healthy people.
Yeah. Well, you also run into like, is anybody going to be able to travel? I mean, obviously here in Illinois, I mean, we're allowed to go, but I mean, they're not really. It's not like they're encouraging anybody to travel out of state or anything like that. So I mean, and I think they said we're still about like another week or so by their estimates for Illinois from hitting the peak of this thing. Like my wife and I were talking the other day, it's not like once you hit the peak, it's just like bottoms out. It's not like a cliff. So like where is that? So it's not like after if it ends if the peak is in a week, it's not like 8 days they're going to shove everybody back into a classroom and everything is going to go back to normal. So it's going to take a while for even that to roll out. So to your point, like, I mean, so much happens in that Maryland, Mid-Atlantic area. And a lot of events take place in those areas. I mean, it's going to be dependent, but it's also going to be dependent on can the teams that normally travel to those things. I mean, I think, Michael, to your point, like, yeah, I think not everybody's going to be able to move to July. If everybody washes out June, like, there's only so many days in July, and there's only so much demand. And if everybody's cramming it into a 30-day month, not everybody's going to be able to cram in there. You kind of brought up another interesting point that I kind of want to touch on as far as like the NCAA, because obviously we're kind of at that point where, with their ruling, how that impacts the kids that are seniors. I mean, obviously I think it's going to trickle down to, the 21s and 22s as well. But I mean, obviously the current group of 20s is the most significantly impacted. I'd kind of like to get your guys' take on what you thought about the NCAA ruling as far as giving the guys a 5th year. Okay, we'll go with Lee. We'll go with you first.
I'll start. Okay. I think that one of the things that maybe will happen is that whoever has grad schools that can sort of place their players. For instance, being a Hobart guy myself, I've already seen Eric Holden apply to the transfer portal because he really doesn't have the ability to play the fifth year at Hobart,
Mm-hmm.
having already graduated. And I think that's going to be part of the equation as far as how many colleges maybe keep their players. Now, obviously, this is going to make a very big impact on roster
Yeah.
size. And as far as how does a coach divide up their scholarship money is really this is uncharted territory.
Yeah, I don't think we're
Uh,
actually gonna get
it,
answers like anytime soon. Like as far as like how this will really, I guess truly impact things. I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I know the NCAA is not giving as much money this year to the schools based on losing the NCAA basketball tournament, which funded a lot of athletic departments.
Yeah.
So there's, I mean, I'm not worried about Ohio State. I'm not worried about Notre Dame. I'm not worried about Duke. I'm not worried about any Big Ten team. But you might start worrying about like a Lafayette
Yeah.
or a Bucknell, or a like a Cleveland State that just started, or a Bellarmine. I mean, all of a sudden, if they don't have the money and their players start getting nervous, well, all of a sudden you start. I mean, I think this transfer portal is actually starting to really heat up, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And I find it to be pretty. If I was a coach, and I talked to a coach last week, and they were basically saying they don't know what to expect. But if you look at it from a kid coming in, a senior who was already committed, well, now he was committed, but some of those seniors might be staying. So he's going there. I think you have to let the seniors finish. The only problem for the seniors is it might cost them another $50,000 to go to school. It's not like they're getting a full ride. They might be getting $12,500 off a $65,000 bill. So, to Lee's point, do they take it to graduate school? Now, I know the Ivy League, they don't allow you to play as a graduate student. So those kids might say, we're gone. So, again, I think it's all fluid. I think I think all the rules that if they start pushing these rules saying this is how it's done and this is how we do it, the NCAA is going to end. Because people are going to say, screw that. This is a world-changing event. This is probably a generational event. This is a World War II type of scenario for some of these people. And if you have an outfit like the NCAA, which is not very likable right now, and they start hammering people, they're going to say, I don't want to be a part of the NCAA right now.
Yeah.
I can see basketball and football saying, we'll take it on our own. We'll start our own divisions and take it from there. So I think this is something that better be fluid, take into account the unbelievable circumstances we have here, and to let the seniors. I worry about the freshmen, the incoming freshmen, the high school kids going forward.
Yeah,
there might not be any money going forward. There might not be any sports money going forward, especially in lacrosse. We were talking with I was talking with Chris Garland about it. We were texting back and forth, and I said, does this become a whole big MCLA? Does everyone no scholarships and just go and play and have there's you can get better money in educational wise, grades wise. So it's all great to speculate now. I think this is I honestly believe this is a turning point for so many things in this country, school being one of them.
Yeah.
My daughter is now homeschooling, and she's like, I want to homeschool.
Yeah.
She's like, this is easy. This is great. I love it. I want to homeschool. And I'm like, no. I go, the social aspect is what school is. But then you think about it. Well, the social aspect is school. And if you play sports, I mean, this could end sports in high schools. There's so many different things. So, we could go down a whole rabbit hole here, which I've gone down rabbit holes already about this. I just, it's unfair, but life's not fair. Life doesn't pick winners. I always believe that, but it's tough. But it's no fault of the seniors, and it's no fault of the freshmen.
Yeah.
So hopefully there's going to be smart heads that will say, let's relax the rules. Let's look at these insinuating circumstances and say, we could do stuff to try to help people out.
Yeah. I'm just
not notorious for doing that, but
yeah.
Who knows?
I'm just gonna play devil's advocate because I guess we can't all agree. I mean, I partly agree with you, Michael, and just in terms of it's everybody got screwed, and part of it's kind of nice that the NCAA is letting the seniors come back or have the option to come back. I guess is more to the point. But there is that small part of me that's kind of wants to be like, you know what? I was like, everybody's kind of getting screwed right now. I mean, I think my buddy got laid off. Like he's he's a server at a restaurant. Like he's not getting paid. He's not working. There's a lot of people like that. There's a business. They literally just opened at the end of like middle of February. They had their grand opening, and we were talking to the owner, and he's like, he had to lay off his entire staff. He had 5 people working for him. He had to lay off his entire staff, and he does not know if they're actually going to survive this because they're just doing. I mean, luckily they're able to do takeout, but he said like one day when they would have done a few thousand, they did like $200. So I mean, there's people hurting, and so there's that part of me that kind of looks around. I'm like, everybody's kind of a little screwed for the NCAA to kind of get, it's like I don't want to say screw the seniors because that's not really the route I'm taking, but I look at like what is this going to do? What ripple effect is this going to have? Not for just the 2020s, but the 2021s. I mean, I was talking to a friend who's covers soccer, and he was like, the kind of conspiracy had is that NCAA probably offered this, figuring that probably 90% of the seniors won't take it. Like they might have at this point in their college career, they might already had jobs lined up, and who's gonna take turn down a $50,000 to $60,000 a year job to come back for college for one more year to play lacrosse, or just to be back in college again. Especially. I mean, a guy like Michael Sowers, like, is he going to come back to play lacrosse? Like, he's Princeton. Like, you would like to think that he has a pretty good future ahead of him outside of lacrosse. Or, he'll get drafted into PLL regardless. He's got to be the number 1 pick. But, you just kind of look at, what that's going to do to the seniors in high school. Because you think about it, it's like, what are these guys? Like, these guys probably picked rosters based on, like, all right, I see, I'm an attackman. I see, like, we'll just say Maryland, like, Maryland's got like, 3 attackmen or whatever on their roster, and they're as seniors, and they're going to graduate, so that'll give me a spot. And it's not only like, are those 3 seniors from Maryland going to come back, but we've seen, like Michael, you said the transfer portal earlier. Are we going to see guys that are going to enter the transfer portal, and like maybe it's a chance, like maybe a kid that wanted, like, that a college coach was high on when the guy was a freshman, like, oh, now we have kind of another shot at him to get him to come in. So, maybe there's a guy that's already played a year or 2 at college that's in the transfer portal that they're like, well, we like him better than maybe the guy that's coming in as a freshman, or even a guy that they had that was a freshman this year that never even got to play. So, I mean, I think it's kind of open like a Pandora's box that I don't think anybody really knows what it's going to do to the sport, because I mean, I've already heard from a few college coaches that they've had to lay off staff. It's not like they're gonna in some colleges they're just not gonna have the money to provide for extra scholarships or anything like that. Like lacrosse isn't a big budget sport to begin with, and I mean a lot of money comes from March Madness, and that money did not happen this year. I mean, I think at one point was it like $900 million or something like that they make off March Madness. I mean, it's an insane amount of money for conferences to lose.
I think it's more than that now.
I think it's more than that. I think it's over $1 billion a year now.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of money to lose and not have to funnel into conferences and programs and stuff like that. And it's like, how is everybody kind of recover from that? So it's like, there's I have no inside knowledge, but I'm like, it's got to be one of those things. I'm like, there's got to be so many things that just got to fall out and shake out, and like to kind of add that on top. I'm like, I think we all feel bad. I think it's kind of safe to say that we all feel bad for the seniors, but I'm just wondering, like, man, how much of a thing did they open up by letting those guys come back? That we're gonna feel for a few more years.
It could very well be that we are overanalyzing it.
Oh, I mean,
basically, the kids who are going to go transfer for grad school are going to transfer for grad school anyhow. And the ones, as you say, I mean, if you're an Ivy League grad, in all likelihood in this economy, remember, before this all started, our unemployment rate was so low that you could have written your own ticket coming out of an Ivy League school this summer.
Yeah.
And I assume that an awful lot of these kids had lined up their jobs already. And as you say, this is Most of the colleges at the D1 level are very high-end academic schools. Certainly, a lot of the D3 schools are high academic schools. And when you just kind of look at the whole thing, it could very well be that we get a normal summer even with this. And then maybe not a lot of the slots need to be worried about for the incoming freshmen.
Yeah.
But the money aspect of this obviously is a very key part of it. Without that, those two very big, we say the NCAA basketball tournament. I assume that the BCS probably funnels a lot of money through that too. And those are your two big tickets that always sort of pay for an awful lot of the freight. And maybe you'll just have a season where the one or two big donors at the colleges who are very big on the sport will reach in and write another check. Maybe a Utah gets a David Needleman to write another check, which he probably gladly would do. And there are other schools where that situation is possible also. I think that it's easy to talk about it. We're probably all better off of a wait and see attitude on it, and just and Mike, brought up the point about going to the school because you want to go to the school. If this year hasn't highlighted that in the kids and parents' minds, I don't know what will. It's still all about going to the college. It's not about playing lacrosse.
Yeah.
And kids have got to accept that, and parents have got to accept that.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement on that. Well, I know we kind of got broken up in the middle, but I don't want to end with it all seeming like, it's very been like, I don't know how it feels for you guys, but it's like, it's been nice to kind of talk a little bit lacrosse, a little bit, kind of, because obviously I've talked lacrosse with my wife. She just kind of nods at me, shakes my head. I see the eyes glaze over, after about like 30, 40 seconds. So this has been nice for me. So I kind of do want to leave it on a bit of a positive note. I know, Michael, you and I really didn't get to see too many games. I was looking forward to, had a bit of a sad moment yesterday, I think it was, when I looked at my calendar and I did delete the Midwest Lacrosse Challenge off my calendar for an event that I was attending. I think I was literally before this kind of all went down. I was like, I'm going to book my hotel tomorrow for the tourney, and I was like, well, I guess I'm kind of glad I didn't do that. But we didn't get to see much lacrosse as much as we had planned. But I kind of would like to leave off with just a little bit of something positive and what you guys saw this year that you really enjoyed, that people can kind of like, all right, this will hopefully be something people can kind of glean onto for takeaway for the 2020 season, even though I think, most people, it'll be remembered for other reasons, but I would like to get something. So, Michael, how about you? I know you said you got to see about 8 games. Even if they weren't, official games, you still got to see some lacrosse. Like, what'd you see that put a smile on your face this year?
Well, Culver was watching that. I'll be personal. A personal thing. Seeing my son be able to run.
Yeah.
That was seeing him run and not look like it was a dry heave on grass.
Yeah.
That's literally like what he could actually run. So that was a pleasant thing to me. And getting to see the parents. See, when I go to these games, you talk to them on Twitter and your email.
Yeah.
And getting to talk to the parents. When I went to one of the Culver games, like I was in Louisville, and all the parents were coming up to me and talking to me, and I thought it was great. That's the part that I like, the camaraderie of that. The games are great, but it's the whole relationship that I have with parents, with players, with coaches, that I got to keep going, and it's still going on. So I'm still happy. I like we said, we know it's a rough situation. I'm liking the outreach that's going around here that I know of. That I think they put up some senior pictures on a building for another school that they couldn't go to their own school, so they did it at a school or a building next door.
Yeah,
I like the aspect of how the lacrosse community, and I know the whole community, but the lacrosse community is lifting each other up in this time and trying to help out. So that's, with my abbreviated season, I like seeing the help of what's going on right now.
Yeah. How about you, Lee?
Echoing obviously on that with the lacrosse community, we tend to take care of our own pretty well. I see it obviously with the sad things that we had going on, and the community stepping up and helping up on further with this. One of the things that I found interesting this year was it seems like the game down here is evolving into more of the northern style. After watching Kings knock off Oxbridge, I caught up with Stan Ross in the parking lot, who's the Oxbridge head coach for
Mm-hmm.
those who don't know. And I brought it up to him. I said, Stan, I'm noticing that a lot of the games are starting to go 9-5, 10-6. We're not getting these 16 to 14 track meets very often down here. And he said, look, that's our coaching with all the northern influence that we've brought down here. It started to sink in, and the players are sort of adapting. The game I saw that night, you could have put that up in West Genesee playing Irondequoit, and it wouldn't have looked out of place. So that's kind of one of the interesting things.
Yeah.
A little shout out to my alma mater, who was off to a fantastic start. Led the nation in scoring this year. A little shout out to head coach Greg Raymond, whose wife was scheduled to give birth on Thursday. I've not heard the result yet back from Greg. Congrats, Greg. Hopefully everything went well and everyone's healthy. You'll be a great dad. Don't worry about that part. And just watching, my alma mater crack the top 20 this year, and the Syracuse game. Those who got to watch it on the ACC network, that was a one-goal game late into the third, until the refs got involved. We won't bitch too much about that. But we were going to be playing Cornell the last game of the year down there, and that would have been fantastic. Uh, and just I think that once in a while it's good to get a really good life lesson. And we're all going through it now, and we will all come out of it on the backside stronger for it. We'll appreciate things that maybe we forgot to appreciate more. And I just think I'll just kind of leave it at that.
Yeah.
We'll be a better country for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, I didn't get to see many games. I did get to watch the Gilman Ponte Vedra game. I actually watched that game 3 times. I watched it once live, but I had to leave work, so I had to start my commute. So I came home and watched it. And the Sam King kid for Gilman, he was off to a fantastic start to the season. Obviously, Carter Parlett with Ponte Vedra, he was putting on a show pretty early on in the year too. So it was kind of nice to see, two teams go head to head. Like obviously, I talked with Coach West and some of his kids a couple weeks ago, and it was just honestly, it was kind of nice to see a Florida team go north to play those guys, because usually, I mean, it's rare that the Florida team goes up to Maryland at that time of year. I mean, it's hit or miss with Maryland, in March. I mean, it kind of makes sense for them to come down. And McDonough, I think, was scheduled to come down, I think, that week. Maybe it was the next day. Like I think it was the week that you guys kind of suspended play that McDonough was supposed to come down. So it was, that was nice to see. Kind of like you, Michael. It's been nice to see the community. Obviously, the lacrosse community has always been small. Well, it feels small. I mean, we're all very spread out across the country, but it feels more like a family and tight knit in that terms. But it's been nice to see like the messages of hope, like even from coaches. Like I know, the players and people have expressed their disappointment with certain state associations and stuff like that at times. And I mean, it's I told my wife, I was like, I think I've gone through the stages of grief at this point, where where it's just kind of the you just kind of have those feelings that you kind of have to work through. I know I was a little bit of a funk for the first like week or two after kind of season started getting canceled, but it was nice because I would go on Twitter, and generally Twitter is not the most positive of places, as I think we all know. I mean, I think we'd probably say that for the internet in general. And yes, I know I'm keeping that in putting it. That's a mild understatement. But it was nice because I would see coaches kind of almost use this moment in life as kind of like, this is a tough moment, but we're going to get through it. And they kind of talk with their players about, they are using it as that teaching moment. So, it was just kind of nice because, I mean, I think in the end of the day, we kind of sometimes forget that the coaches, they're also teachers. Like they're in the job of, teaching these kids how to be men, how to, in some way, be part of a society, because I mean, that's what a team is. Like it's kind of a microcosm of what you do every day when you go to work, every day what we all do. So it's kind of nice to see that, and obviously I think I'd like to get Cascade shifting to make the mask and stuff like that. I'm sure that was no small undertaking for a company like that to switch completely what they were doing. I mean, they probably have to figure out like, all right, there's a little bit of a difference between making the PPEs versus a lacrosse helmet. So I'm sure there was a learning curve there, but it's just kind of nice to see. I mean, as bad as stuff like this is, I think you start to see the best in humanity um, kind of step up in times like this. So I mean, to your point, Lee, every now and then it's kind of nice to see. You kind of get a reminder every now and then, like, oh, maybe things aren't as bleak as sometimes the news would make it out to be from time to time. So, I mean, that's kind of my takeaways. These are the things I hope I remember from the 2020 season when it's all said and done. I keep thinking about what I'm going to do on Lax Records for the year because I've toyed around. I was like, well, I can't really do a all Lax Records team because I'm like, some way I could, but it would make no sense. It would just be one of those things. I mean, yeah, it's gonna be tough. So it's just gonna be one of those. It's gonna be an asterisk season, I think, for all of us. But hopefully you remember some of the positive stuff that comes out of it, and not that it was a ruined season. Like I think there's probably will be some things that come out of this that we will probably hear about later. Maybe on stuff that maybe not be hearing now. But I think we probably get kids. I'm hearing stories of kids. Not starting businesses, but there's a group of kids. I think it was in Kentucky. He was a college student that he decided to start doing the free grocery shopping for seniors, and now it's like expanded into other states. There's actually an alum from the college that I work at. They got involved with it, so you hear stories like that, and I think we'll probably hear more and more of that as time goes on for people that kind of just stepped up. So those are things I hope we remember at any point. No. As we kind of wrap up here, the usual, Michael, where can people find you online?
You could email me at mward@laxrecords.com. On Twitter, you can find me at MFWCHI or at One Man Ride.
And Lee, how about you? Where can people find you?
Email is lee@floridalacrossenews.com. Twitter, Florida, capital L, capital X. Instagram, which I keep promising will be there shortly. Obviously, that got pushed back. And on Facebook, facebook.com/FLALAXnews.com.
And for me, you can find me at Lax Records on both Instagram and Twitter. Obviously, facebook.com/Lax Records. And as always, laxrecords.com, which is pretty much you can find everything there. Guys, thank you a lot for joining me for YouTube Live. I know we had a few technical hiccups on the show, but thanks for bearing with me. Thanks for the people. I know we had a few people tune in, and obviously this will be available on demand, so we can always have people tune in later as well. So, guys, thank you so much for being on.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Thank you.